Woohoo! Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. I have in front of you an amazing bottle of Morisoli Vineyard Rutherford Dust wine here, and we will tell you what the Rutherford Dust is in a moment. But Morisoli is based in the town of Rutherford, and it is one of the appellations of Napa Valley. Something that I've completely fallen in love with is the wines of the Rutherford area, and it does have its own society called the Rutherford Dust Society. We will explain that in a few minutes, but let me explain who this man is next to me and why I'm in his house. This is Joel Aiken, the wonderful winemaker who a lot of people know here in Napa Valley for various reasons, but let me say one thing to you. Have you ever heard of a brand called BV, Beaulieu Vineyards? Well, this man, Joel Aiken, and I got to know each other a long time ago in the 90s when you were the head winemaker at BV.
Yeah.
And you were there for a long time.
27 years.
27 years.
Run.
He was the third winemaker ever at BV. And that is really something. And I got to share with you and so many other great people the 100-year anniversary of that came about in the year 2000. So right now, today, the winery is technically 121 years old since we are in 2021. So we got to celebrate that. And Joel, you and I have been good friends for a long time. And it's always fun. One of the wonderful things that brings us together today is to talk about the Rutherford Dust Society and why it's even called that in the first place. But Rutherford, for all of you that love Napa Valley, it's really the middle ground between Napa, downtown Napa, and Calistoga. So it is really the middle part. It's also the fattest part. So it's really kind of the widest part right there. So you have a lot of land, most of which is planted now. But when I was a kid growing up, there were a lot of fruit trees still there.
Plums and walnuts.
Yeah, you know that. I mean, you were here. And when my mom would bring me over in the 70s, I mean, it was as much that as there were vineyards. And we did go to BV when I was a kid. My mom, I think there were maybe 9 wineries open back in the late 70s. And BV was one of them. So, what a great ride you had there. But, I think that how you've helped me, besides being, you and I drinking old bottles of BV often and things like that, is just about the Rutherford area and why we use the term Rutherford Dust. So tell us a little bit about the Rutherford area and why it's so special to you.
Yeah, so Rutherford, as Chris mentioned, is right in the middle of the valley, north-south. So as you go further north to Calistoga, it gets to be much warmer. And Cabernets, there's some good Cabernets growing up there, but they need to be in the right location. As you come further south, you get a lot of fog in the morning and a little bit cooler than I think is ideal for Cabernet. So Rutherford is at this sweet spot, great temperatures. It's wide, so you have actually a lot of diversity within Rutherford, but it's all great for Cabernet. This is from the benchland on the west, which is where BV had all of our historic vineyards. And that rocky, gravelly soil gives you a little bit smaller yield, bolder wine. It's kind of fringing on almost like a mountain fruit. So a lot of intensity, a lot of power, a lot of ageability. That's why the 50-year-old BVs we were drinking are still great. The center of the valley is a little bit deeper, richer soil. You get wines that are softer than like really powerful backward wines. And towards the east, you get wines that go up on the hills as well. But it's just a sweet spot for Rutherford. And Rutherford Dust is this elusive term that Andrei Chelichev, very famous winemaker who had 35 years at BV, coined. And no one has really defined what Rutherford Dust is.
We haven't defined it yet, but we're working on it.
There's something a little bit earthy and herbal, but also a lot of chocolate and cherry fruit. Yeah. And you've got your descriptor for Rutherford.
Yeah, well, I love the milk chocolate kind of effect of it too. And sometimes it's milk chocolate dust. Sometimes it's like almost like a truffle, almost like a milk chocolate truffle. And sometimes it's just straight milk chocolate. And you like to say mocha, which is true, but that's sometimes about the barrel too.
I was going to say, it's
You know,
about the
a little bit
barrel.
about the barrel too. But just as far as we get into it, I mean, I've always felt like that's one kind of thing too. I also tend to get a little bit of sage kind of character in here too.
Yeah,
And that's that
absolutely.
herbal character that you were saying, and not a bad character, because if you have fresh sage, it's dynamic, and it's really good.
Herbal or brambly. Not green.
Not green.
But something
Not green. Well, the Rutherford Dust Society is such a great organization, and I want to say thank you once again to Joel for so many years of you and I working together with the Rutherford Dust Society. It's a great little society. They actually, if you join it, it's actually great, because actually you have parties every now and then at the Grange. Not this past year, but the Grange, they have all sorts of events in that little Grange right downtown, right near the Rutherford Grill.
And we just started having consumer memberships this last year, so it's the first time you can sign up to be special.
It's not very expensive either, you guys. It's awesome. But the fact is that one of the reasons you and I got together today, and we're drinking some fine wine from Morisoli, is to talk about the Rutherford Dust participation in Premier Napa. And Premier Napa, for all of you out there, some people know it, some people don't. It's not the Napa Valley wine auction, okay? Let's make that real clear. This is more of a trade thing where trade people come here and they start getting really into these brands and start meeting winemakers and really taking their ideas back and sometimes buying amazing barrels of wine that will be bottled for them, in Colorado or New York or wherever it is.
They're one of a kind. It's not.
There's one of a kind. They are signature kind, and they are just for that restaurant or that investor or a collector.
They sign every bottle that I make.
Yeah, so it's a big deal, and so this year everyone, Premier Napa. It actually happens in February usually, so we did not have it this year, and luckily you and I are Johnson & Johnson boys. We got our shots, which is cool. We were among the first to get Johnson & Johnson's, and we are also going to be participating together in this, which is going to happen in June this year. So the thing was that Napa Valley Wine Auction usually happens in June, but because there's no telling when we could set that up, it was kind of postponed for the time being, and that slot was open, so Premier Napa will now be happening then. So tell everyone a little bit about what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, so actually this is the 25th Premier Napa Valley.
Century,
and so all of the past chairs, which I'm one, are co-chairing this year.
Yeah.
So we had a meeting in January saying, okay, this is coming up February 21st. Nobody had a good feeling about it. It's going to be virtual. How are we going to get wines in people's mouths? And one of the co-chairs said, well, what if we postpone it till June? And we're like, our jaws dropped. Why didn't we think of that before? So we are planning on having as much of it as we can being in person, being a live event. For those who can't make it, it will be virtual. So in Rutherford, we're hoping to have an event where people can come and taste.
Yep.
And we will also, for those who can't be, doing an hour-long video, filming some of it ahead of time, some of it live. That's where Chris comes in.
Yep.
We'll be tasting a bunch of wines to see what we want to taste on the air that day and talking about Rutherford and looking forward to a great event and one of the first wine events that isn't all virtual in the last year. So it's going to be fun. Pretty
amazing. When Joel called me, I was very excited, and Sarah Fowler and the other people on the board that really asked me to do this, I'm very excited about it, obviously, and we'll do more about that as it gets closer. But we're excited just to have Napa Valley get off the map again. I mean, here we go. Let's get live. Let's make people, if you can't be here in wine country, let's bring wine country to you. I think this is going to be a great event to really promote Napa Valley as well as the Rutherford area. And I think that, really I've fallen in love with it through the years. I mean, being in this industry for more than 30 years now, it's a great thing, and really being a part of that conversation that we have every year when we do kind of a trade and media seminar, which I've been the leader of a number of times. And
we love having you there.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of, especially with all these great winemakers out there and the members of the trade that I get to talk about the joys of these great wines in front of them and have these great panels of winemakers up there with me and really talking about, it's a learning process. I mean, it really is. And you've been part of this for so long and you've been following it so long and you're still like, ooh, googly goo over like all the things that you're learning from these experiences. Each vintage is different.
It's interesting. Andrei Chalichev, he was at BV 35 years, left in 73. He was consulting with us in the early 90s. He passed away in 1994, at the age of 92. And as I was working with him, he would come in like once a week to taste. And at the end of the day, he would say, Joel, thank you so much. I learned something today. Yeah. He always said, he was always a perpetual student. No matter how well something had gone the year before, he was like, okay, we can do better.
Such an amazing
Never get set
person.
in your ways.
Yeah, Andre is a legend and a real saint for this industry, and really taught so many people so many things. And you're the one that came right after him at BV, and I mean, amazing. You were the third winemaker at BV. That's crazy, But it's an amazing experience to work at a winery with so much reputation, but also to put out wines and to continue to actually go beyond that. So, speaking of which, there's what you really taught me, I think some of the original lessons you taught me one-on-one was about these clones of Cabernet Sauvignon. So we're here on the Varietal Show, of course. We're talking about Cabernet Sauvignon. One of those vineyards that took one of the clones is actually the Morisoli vineyard. So tell everyone a little bit about that program that you had going there at BV and actually how you were actually bottling some of these things separately.
So the whole thing started in 1980. So right before I got there, the team at BV was looking at Cabernet Sauvignon and saying, nobody's ever done a comparison of clones in California. And there were a lot of clones that were either identified through UC Davis or just, this is what George de la Tour brought in this decade, and Spring Mountain has this, and no one had ever really compared them. So we took, 14 clones from different parts of the world and planted them in the same vineyard side by side and made wine for almost 10 years and bottled it up. And we compared yields, compared date of harvest, et cetera, and there were definitely clones that we loved, clones that we didn't. And this clone 4, is interesting. It came from Mendoza, Argentina, but as we all know, a lot of Europeans went to Argentina in the 1800s. So it came from Bordeaux ultimately, but had never been used commercially in the US. And it became one of our absolute favorites. It had good yield, good intensity. We were trying back in the 80s to get rid of the green herbal character before we did all these changes to the trellis. And the Morisolis saw what we had done, loved it. It's now pretty well respected and widely planted clone within the Napa Valley. But all of these clones, they were amazingly different. They're all Cabernet Sauvignon. Some yielded as third as much as others. So those weren't very popular with growers. So this has good yield, good intensity, just beautiful. But when I was making 100% Cabernet, I would use different clones to act as agents like you would normally with different blends. And because BV used to make everything 100% varietal. Because if you go back before 1983, Cabernet only had to be 51% varietal, so this could have been 49% Chenin Blanc. So BV wanted purity.
Are you listening to this, you guys? This is big information from back in the old days and how the stuff you saw was in the label, not necessarily true. Fighting varietals, when it became a term that more people knew, there started to become some more definition of how much, and now it's 75%, and there's certain things about zones and certain things where 85% is more.
So from an appellation, it's 85%.
85% for a specific appellation, exactly. So amazing. So Morisoli, give a little picture of where this is. It is the western bench part there. So if you go to Rutherford, it actually starts down in Oakville. well, technically Yountville is where this bench starts, and it's moving this way against the Mayacamas Mountains, and it's right at the base of it. It's coming down. It's not flat land there. It's actually at a little bit of an angle, and that's why they call it the bench. If you really think about it, the drainage is natural because it's not flat land. It's kind of, the rain is going to go down like that. It is the way it is. And where do the leaves of those trees of the Mayacamas, which is where there's tons of forest up there, where do those go? Do you get out with a blower and blow them away? No, they actually become part of the whole genus there. Which is really amazing because that they biodegrade and all these kinds of things happen there, and it's amazing how these flavors come out of there. And that's why I said a little bit of sage. I'm not crazy. It probably came from up there, and the leaves coming down, and there probably is wild sage up there.
Yeah. So this is within Rutherford to the very far west, and so once you get there. It is interesting. One of our vineyards just south of there, most people think it looks pretty flat, but from the highway going west to the back of the vineyard, the elevation goes up 50 feet. So this is rocky, gravelly, well-drained soil. It's just, I don't know, one of the best areas for Cabernet.
I agree. I think this is very, very special. And to be really honest, I've always known Morisoli because of BV and because of Joel's own, his Aiken brand. But, this is the son, this is the next generation that really started this brand, his own family brand. You're making it for them.
Yeah, it's an honor to make this. So over 100 years, they've been working this vineyard. This is the first commercial wine they've ever made. Yeah. So they've sold a lot of grapes to great wineries. So I think it's appropriate at this point to start tooting their own horn and, there's more to come. Yeah.
And Morisoli, an I at the end. Oh, God, got to be Italian. Swiss Italian, actually. So amazing, how this all happened, especially around that time when BV started is when this family arrived. And a lot of Italian and Swiss Italian immigrants started coming over right about the turn of last century. Not this century, last century. And it was right about then. I mean, we really didn't have that much Italian culture in California, especially before that. But it was really right around the turn there in the millennium. It was very interesting how that kind of worked out, where we've gone to today with the millennium changing and everything. But it's really 120 to 125 years ago that the Swiss Italian culture really started becoming part of this whole landscape here in Napa Valley. And the Morisolis are a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they're fun people. This is a small family-owned brand, and it's from Rutherford with the Rutherford Dust written all over it, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, they're old-time farmers. They're not new fancy folks. They farm with vintage tractors. It's funny to see their 1934 tractor going out there in 1950. I always ask Gary, why don't you get something new? And I'm, nope, this is good enough. And they're happy. Now that's part of how they market it. We've been here for 100 years, and we're using the tractors that my grandfather used. So it's very, very cool.
Amazing. Well, I really appreciate you opening up this bottle for me and for everyone that wants to get into this brand, Morisoli Vineyard, not plural, morisolivineyard.com. You can find out more information about this and what Joel's doing for them and these different wines.
This will be released sometime late, July, August. We're not really sure. I've got to talk to Chris to see.
Yeah, sometime around the Premier Napa, which we're doing. It's going to be great. But tell everyone else you're working on some more projects right now. What's happening?
So I've got this. Scattered Peaks is another brand that I'm working with.
That's a good one to know.
That is using Morisoli Cabernet, also Cabernet from Sage Ridge, which is up in the hills east of the valley. And through the years, I've been working on my own brand, making Pinot in addition to Cabernet, because I love Cabernet, but I drink a lot of Pinot.
Yes, you do.
And through the years, worked with Amici,
we do.
Chase, Rare Cat, so... it's been good.
Yeah, this man is not retired, everyone. That's the whole point of this show. This man is not retired. he is making killer wines, and this is fun, and I can't wait to work with you on the Rutherford Dust Premier Napa little lots and have some fun there. But this is where we're at right now in 2021. We're moving forward, and this is a great thing. Napa Valley is open again. These wineries and ones that we didn't even know about are popping up because they've had time to really work with it. So we look at this as a great movement forward. And I think that when you fall in love with Morisoli and Rutherford Dust wines, you'll understand where we're at right now, why we're so happy to be together and just to talk about the fun things and to promote this area and all the great things that we get to experience here, we want to share with others. No doubt about that. And we're going to
get to do more of that in 2021 as the year goes on.
Absolutely. So thanks once again for tuning in to the Varietal Show, and thank you once again for hosting me today, Joel. And
great to be with you.
Cheers. Have a great one, everyone, and tune back in to the next show of the Varietal Show. Cheers. Bing.